到为中美关系做贡献。接下来这一位也是啊，他是把一切献给中美关系啊，contribute all he has to China-U.S. relations or U.S.-China relations. Stephen Orlins, 美中关系全国委员会的主席 ，President of the National Committee on U.S.-China relations. Before he comes up to the stage, I have to say, if you don't know Stephen, it means you haven't worked in the field of U.S.-China relations, because he really has contributed everything he has to this relationship. Started with the time when U.S.-China was trying to establish this diplomatic relations. He worked in the legal team, tried to make things happen. And then since 2005, he has been the president of U.S.-China Committee on the bilateral relations. So Stephen Orlins, without further ado, let's welcome you. Stephen.
应该说过奖。大家晚上好。今天有多少人是在中国读高中？很多。有多少在中国读大学了？哦，不少了。所以很多研究生啊。1979年。我在国务院的时候，在白宫接待邓小平，没有想到2017年会有32万5千中国学生在美国，我们都没想到。我79年就离开国务院，我搬到北京。有谁会相信我去一个朋友家吃饭需要北京市长批准？真的。我本来是要全部用中文演讲，但是你们知道吗？我47年以前，我是在离这不到1公里的地方开始学中文，所以今天在这里说中文，仿佛还会听到我的老师说：“你的发音不对。”所以我老老实实的用英文讲话吧。When the organizers asked me to talk about the future of U.S.-China relations, I realized that the future is in this room. What you in this room decide to do with your lives is going to determine the future of U.S.-China relations. So let me just briefly, rather than talk about the relationship, talk about vision, talk about failure, and talk about your obligation to do something for this society that has given you so much. First, vision. Now, Tianwei, you never asked me this question, but pretty much all the media that 他们都说，哎呀，你70年开始学中文，你非常有远见，你非常有远见。Well, let me tell you the truth. 我没有远见。Right? Let's see. In 1970, every window in Harvard Square was broken because of the war in Vietnam. The school had to close. And I believed in the American government. I believed in the American people because, like many of you, I was a first-generation American. My parents were immigrants from Europe, and we grew up in a family that believed without the American government, without the American people, you don't exist. So we grew up believing that we had an obligation to the American government and the American people. And the war in Vietnam and this chaos in Harvard Square, I couldn't figure out why good people do bad things. Why the good people, the American government, did this thing that I disagreed with fundamentally, the war in Vietnam. So I had one of Professor Elliott's predecessors, a fellow by the name of Alex Woodside, in this chaos, and I said to him, I want to study Vietnamese to understand what happened. And he said, study Chinese, you can learn about Vietnam that way. And he added, and it might be useful after the war ends. And then he threw, as he walked away, he threw out a comment. He says, and I'll get you a fellowship to study Chinese. And he did, and I was okay at it. And it determined my life, but there was no Yuan Jian. I didn't have a vision. I didn't know what was going to happen. So when you think about life, so many of you come into my office, and you can't figure it out. It's okay. Like the Nike ad, just do it. It's all right. Second, let me talk about failure. So many of us are afraid to fail. Now it was, let's see, in 1976, I graduated from the law school here. And I had a great run till 1992. You know, as Chen Wei said, I worked in the State Department. I did things I only could dream about. I became president of Lehman Brothers Asia. It was just a great job. But because of the family I grew up in, I believed that I needed to give back to society. So I decided that I would take a leave from Lehman Brothers, and I would become the first Chinese-speaking congressman. And for a year, I worked in the 3rd Congressional District in New York, which is, everybody takes the train into New York City from that place, 675,000 people. I used to shake hands with everybody, so much that my hands started to bleed. So running for Congress is not so easy. And when I started, the polling had me 50 points down, then 40 points down, then 30, then 20. Then we were a dead heat. We were even. And that night, all the media was there. I mean, they were just ABC, CBS, NBC were all there. Because this unknown banker who speaks Chinese, kind of weird for a congressman, was going to win the 3rd Congressional District of New York. And 300,000 people voted in that election. Unfortunately, only 143,000 of them voted for me. So I lost. And for the first time in 16 years, I had nothing on my schedule. Not a breakfast, not a lunch, not a dinner, not a meeting. What was good, and I always think when I tell this story of Michael Jordan, who has, I wonder if I can find his quote, don't want to get him wrong, where he said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots, I've lost almost 300 games, 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. And this failure of mine, which was so public, everybody knew I lost. You couldn't hide it. Everybody knew. I didn't go back to Lehman Brothers. I started a new career, which was so much more rewarding and fun and interesting, and ultimately allowed me to have the job that I do today, giving back to society as president of the National Committee of U.S.-China Relations. Which brings me to my final point, obligation. It was 10 years ago that Bill Gates spoke to the graduating class at Harvard. And he quoted the first president that I ever met, John F. Kennedy. And he said, to those whom much is given, much is expected. You have all studied at the finest institutions in China, the finest institutions in America, in the world. You have benefited from what Secretary Kissinger, President Nixon, Chairman Mao, and Zhou Enlai have done. They have sacrificed, they have laid the foundation for you to benefit. If you participate, if you choose to participate in a meaningful way in shaping the U.S.-China relationship, then 我放心. If you don't, if you allow, both in China and the United States, the fake news to continue, people to make misstatements, whether it's about China and the United States or about the United States in China. I could spend all night going over those falsehoods. If you sit back and do nothing, the relationship will deteriorate. But if you participate, if you give back, if you fulfill that obligation, then 美中关系会更上一层楼。谢谢各位。